All right, we are officially recording. Thank you all for coming tonight to our question and answer. It's going to be very chill, very informal. And we're just going to introduce ourselves, and DJ will go ahead and introduce yourself first.
Hey y'all, my name is DJ. I don't have my camera on right now. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin, and I took 6 gap years and applied this cycle.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Phaedra. I'm from north of Atlanta, Georgia, and I took 2 gap years. This is my 2nd gap year, and I also applied this cycle.
Hey, everyone. So my name is Amber Donald. I'm from a lot of places. So I'll just tell you where I went for undergrad. I went to the University of Florida. So I'm in Florida right now. And I also applied this cycle, and similar to DJ and Phaedra, we all got accepted this cycle, and we're all very passionate about mentorship. That's why we're doing this event, and we just want to make sure that, you know, your concerns are addressed as future applicants about all these testings, because like from our own personal experiences, you know, it was very stressful. Like the more we went through the process, that like we were learning about all this different stuff, and we're just like, is it never ending? So that's why we wish we had something like this. So we hope this is helpful for you. We also have more people within our group, the Madam Dreamers, who also got accepted, and they're here to introduce themselves as well.
I can go. Hi, sorry, I'm in bed. My name's Annette. I am originally from Eagan, Minnesota. It's a suburb of St. Paul, which is the capital. I went to UW-Madison for undergrad, and I took 1 gap year and applied this cycle. And yeah, I was also accepted. I haven't decided where I'm going yet, but I've narrowed it down to a couple of schools, so I'll decide in a couple of weeks. But yeah, just like an Amber, it's definitely a very, very long application process. Like no one really tells you how long it is until you're in it, which is like fine. But yeah, no, I wish I had known some of the things I know now going into it. So I think it's awesome that we're doing this, because it's like nearly a year long of a process. So it's good to be prepared.
And thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience as well, Annette. Right now, we are going to actually watch a little video that Amber is going to play for us. It's 4 minutes long, so bear with us, but it just explains kind of like what the Casper is all about.
Yep. Does everyone see my screen? All good? All right. Let's see what the Casper is all about.
Welcome to test day. Before you begin, let's go over some general information and technical tips about your Casper test. The Casper test is designed to evaluate your social intelligence and professionalism through 15 real-world situations where a dilemma is presented, and you're asked to explain how you will react. There are 2 types of scenarios. Word-based scenarios will present you with a short statement to consider. Video-based scenarios, equipped with optional closed captioning, will indicate your role in the scene and then play a short video. The test is divided into 2 response sections. The first is the typed response section. In this section, you'll be presented with 3 word-based scenarios and 6 video-based scenarios, which will appear in randomized order. When each scenario finishes, you'll have 30 seconds of reflection time, and you'll be given 5 minutes to type your responses to 3 open-ended questions, which are automatically saved. Once the 5 minutes are up, you'll be automatically advanced to the next scenario. You can also choose to submit your responses before the timer runs out, but keep in mind you won't be able to go back. The rating of your test will not be impacted by the use of minor spelling or grammar mistakes. Just do your best to answer all 3 questions as clearly and thoroughly as possible. After the first 5 scenarios in the typed response section, there'll be an optional 5-minute break. Stretch your legs, grab a snack, or go to the bathroom. At the end of the typed response section, there will be another optional 10-minute break. You can use this time to prepare for the second section of the test, which is the video response section. In the video response section, you'll be presented with 2 word-based scenarios and 4 video-based scenarios, which will appear in randomized order. When each scenario finishes, you'll have 30 seconds of reflection time and 10 seconds to read the question, and you'll be given 1 minute to record your responses to each of the 3 open-ended questions. Evaluation of your test will not be impacted by the use of jargon, accents, or grammar mistakes. Just do your best to answer all 3 questions as clearly as possible. Your recording will be uploaded once you submit your response or automatically once the 1-minute timer runs out. If the timer runs out before you finish answering, don't panic. This happens to many applicants. Relax, take a deep breath, and start fresh on the next question or scenario. If you finish responding before the timer runs out, you can click submit to move on to the next question or scenario. But remember, you won't be able to go back. Once you've completed your test, your responses are sent off to the Casper raters. Each rater is focused on evaluating a different scenario, so your final Casper score is the result of multiple unique rater impressions. Remember, your test must be taken alone, without the assistance of outside personnel or technology, unless explicitly approved as a testing accommodation by the Altus support team. Any violation of our testing terms or policies will result in the invalidation of your score. You must either use a laptop or desktop computer with a working webcam and microphone. Your webcam must be on, uncovered, and facing towards you for the duration of your test, so that your face is visible. Mobile devices, including tablets and iPads, are not supported. High-speed internet is also required for Casper. Double check that anyone sharing your internet isn't streaming videos, downloading files, or playing video games. This might slow down your test. Make sure your browser is up to date. Firefox and Chrome are the only supported browsers. We recommend having both installed on your computer in case you run into difficulties. If you're currently using Safari, please switch to Chrome or Firefox following the completion of this video. Disable any browser plugins or web applications. These are known to interfere with the test. Finally, if you experience any technical issues, just click on the chat bubble in the bottom right-hand corner of your test screen to talk to one of our live test support agents. We're here to help. Enjoy your Casper experience and good luck.
All right, what do we think of the video?
It was very helpful, honestly. Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm Kelviana.
Hey.
It was very helpful. I honestly never knew anything about the Casper test, and that was very informative. So I honestly didn't know there was video and typing, so that's gonna be interesting.
Yes. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that it was helpful. And that was actually a change from when we took our exam. So when we took our exam, it was straight typing, like it was just typing. But based off the feedback from some people, some people felt like, they didn't like that time restraint, like they can't type that fast. So I think that's why they added in that video portion this year. So it's kind of half and half. But just like they said, even if you run out of time, it's okay. Just do your best typing and speaking. So whatever your strength is, like you could shine in that, and then you can like work on the other skill. What skill, which is the speaking part, what you're nervous about?
Oh, you're asking me or just everyone? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you, yeah.
The speaking part, honestly, I don't know. Yeah, honestly, it made me nervous because it feels like another interview, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's valid. It wouldn't be structured like an interview. It'll be kind of like scenarios, and you're really just, instead of typing, you're just saying what you would have typed. And that helps eases your mind. And also doing, as we'll go on over like practice exams and stuff like that, that'll help you, or looking at practice questions. So yeah.
Amber, can you scroll down so they can see what that infographic shows? So if you'll see here, now we're just going to go into the portion where we all share our experiences. For those of you recently joining us, it's Annette, Amber, DJ, and myself who are kind of explaining our experience with Casper. So this is an infographic that's on that same page of the video we just watched. And something to note is that you can actually only take the Casper one time. So it's one attempt and it has to be during your application cycle. So if you do end up having to reapply, for example, to medical school, you would have to take it again for that cycle. And the the exam registration opens in May, actually. So it opens fairly soon. And from my personal experience, I took the MCAT in April and then I just wanted to get it over with in May. So I took it on the second test day, which was May 10th at 5 p.m. EST. And so I just highly recommend, if you can, get it done before you submit your application. I just feel like it's something that you don't have to worry about. But I understand too that people are like studying for the MCAT and you might want to take it after, because that's definitely what I wanted to do too. And I got into the third quartile. So we're going to explain a little bit more about how the scoring goes later on. But the third quartile is the 50th to 74th percentile of applicants for the exam. And how I prepared for this exam, I actually took the practice exam that is offered by the Altus Suite, which is like the umbrella that holds Casper, Duet, and Snapshot, and we'll get to Duet and Snapshot as well. But for Casper, I just took the practice exam like the day before. I also used BMO, which is one of the many pre-med prep companies out there. They do have YouTube videos on how to prepare for the Casper, so I just watched a few of those. They also have some articles on it, and I felt like it was really helpful and they really helped me prepare. All of this was done within like a few days leading up to the exam. So from my experience, it wasn't something that you really have to study for. This is not the MCAT. There's no prior knowledge, definitely not healthcare knowledge that is in the test, because it's a situational judgment test. But I think my general advice, and then I'll pass it on to Annette or Amber or DJ. In the exam, they're going to have scenarios that they give you, and there are going to be assumptions embedded in those scenarios. So like, say a common example is you're outside of a restaurant and you see someone who looks like they're drunk walking towards a car. They're going to write it in a way where they want you to assume that the person is drunk and that the person is going to the car, i.e. about to drive and do drunk driving. And so I think the key is just to go into every scenario open-minded and not assume anything, and gather that info, because you don't have all of the information. And that's one of the biggest mistakes, I think, that's kind of easy to make, is falling for the assumptions that they provide in the scenario. So what I do when I write out the scenarios is just saying that first, like I give a little descriptor of what's going on, like one line, and then I explain that I need to gather information. I don't have all of the facts. And so I would ask questions, and depending on the scenario, I would encourage the person to like make a pros and cons list, or seek out advice from a supervisor. Kind of depends on the scenario. But another thing to remember is that each section is scored independently. So if you run out of time, don't worry about it. There is a human rater that rates each section differently, or independently, so it's not the same person reading it over and over. So if you feel like, oh, I didn't do as well on that one, or I didn't get all my thoughts out, don't worry about it. You have so many more scenarios to make up for that. And like the video explained, spelling mistakes don't matter. And I had a ton of spelling mistakes. So I'll pass it on to whoever wants to share next.
I can go. You got pretty much everything I was going to say, to be honest. So I'll just like add on to that. But yeah, this is like, honestly, I don't think this is a high stress exam. Like, obviously do your best and like prepare for a little bit beforehand. But it's definitely not something that you need to do like months leading up to it. Like I don't think I did anything, to be honest. I think I was kind of tired at that point. But I would say if you're gonna prepare, definitely I think the practice test is good, especially if you're a slower typer, because like I remember the first couple of questions I got like a little stressed. I did run out of time, and so just like being mindful that it goes by really fast. Like it's 120 minutes, but like it goes by pretty quick. So just prepare for that if you can, but then also definitely take notes during the video. That way you can like think about it during it, and that way when it's time to type, you're like ready to go. But yeah, it's honestly all I can think of. It's honestly not super high stress. Like, don't stress out about it, but like definitely try to do your best. I think I also scored in the same percentile or quartile that you did, like average. But yeah, not super stressful. I don't think.
And I can add on to that as well, just to give context on when I took my exam, because I know it just goes to show no matter when you take your exam, as long as it's within those dates, you're fine. So Phaedra took hers a little earlier, but I didn't take my Casper till Thursday, July 29th at 5 p.m. Yeah, July. I took my MCAT May 15th. So May, June, July. So I took it, I had a gap in between that. And even then I was still burnt out. But essentially, like, there's no huge rush to try to get it done like the first one. Like, as long as you're within those dates that Jamie dropped, you know, all the way from May till July, you'll be good, because it takes about July. It takes about a month for your scores to come back, similar to MCAT, and it'll just get uploaded straight to the schools that you want to send it to. And that'll be probably around the time you're doing secondaries or not. And if anything, the schools will just wait until your score comes back. So there's no huge pressure to like get the first date or anything. And similar to Phaedra, I also got the 3rd percentile. It's not that big of a deal. Like, they're not going to be like in your interview, oh, you didn't get the highest percentile, what's going on? Or like, I feel like I want to say they're starting to try to use it more, but even during our cycle, I feel like they did not really use it. It was just another barrier, another thing for you to get into school. So that was just kind of context on my end. And if I were to do anything else differently, honestly, it would be to chill out more, because like, it is another test. You want to stress, but looking back, it is what it is. They just want to see how you think through scenarios. If you've had a lot of involvement doing like stuff on campus or things like that, you already innately have the answers within yourself, or you probably dealt with a scenario like that already. So just type it out how you would do things, like, you know, in those type of scenarios, and you'll be perfectly fine. Like, yeah, so that's what I'll have to say. DJ, do you have any room you want to speak on with this?
Yeah, hey y'all, sorry, I'm back home now, so I'll turn my camera on. I agree with everything that was said, and then I also will share, I actually got 2nd quartile, and so you're like, why the hell, like, are you here? You got 2nd quartile. Just know that, like, I'm here because there are things I learned after the fact that I really do think I would have done a lot better had I known now. Sorry, my dog's about to start barking. But I will say, in addition to what Phaedra said, when you think about the scenarios, you know, really think about who are the stakeholders in the scenario, because when they present something, there's going to be other parties and other perspectives to think about, of people who are not like you might be only talking to one person, theoretical person in the scenario, but there might be like 3 other people you have to think about their perspectives. So think about who has stake in a given scenario. Think about all of the angles and be mindful in your response. I'm just kicking my dog out.
Yes, that's good advice for sure. I think another sorry. Continue, DJ, sorry.
Yeah, and then the other thing I wanted to say is with the timing, I agree with you, really don't need to do a lot of prep. So I actually took the Casper. I didn't know I was going to have to take the Casper. I made last minute adjustments to my school list. So, and I only like 2 or 3 of my schools were asking for it. So I found out in like August that I needed to take it, and I didn't get it to state until September. And like, I submitted my AMCAS a little later. So like, I was actually like knee deep in secondaries when I took it. So like, I agree with taking it earlier, and with the timing, they will grade your response while it's incomplete. Like, you don't have to answer all 3 questions to get to score well, but you want to be concise and have high quality answers, just in case you don't get to the other 2 responses, just so that you can score higher. Because I spent way too much time thinking about the scenario, and then like what Annette said, like I typed slower and ran out of time, and I really didn't actually get to fully express my responses the way I wanted to. And so the only thing I will say is maybe take one of the practice tests just so you can understand the way the timing works and the flow of the exam. And if anything, if you are gonna kind of prep for it, I would say prep for it by actually doing practice multiple or MMI scenarios, because MMI scenarios are very similar to Casper scenarios, and at least you're getting something out of it because you're going to need MMI for interviewing. That way you're not actually spending a ton of time on actual Casper specific prep, but it will just help you practice some scenarios beforehand, and like then you'll be good when it comes to interview season.
Yeah, I think another thing to add before we move on to talking about the Snapshot and Duet, because I feel like that'll be a better segue than talking about the SJT/preview, was that Annette mentioned it in the chat, but it is $12 to register for the Casper exam, and then it's $12 for each additional school that you add. And so you can add schools before you take the exam, after the exam, but just know that there's that $12 fee and then $12 per school added. And do we want to talk about our experience with Snapshot? I know Amber actually took it, so you can go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. And before we do that too, just to touch on Phaedra's point, if you do qualify for the fee assistance waiver program, the FAP, that's waived, I believe, the $12 per school, right? Okay, yeah. So do that, just shoot your shot. Okay, so in addition, so like y'all aren't shook like I was. So you think it's just Casper, but it's actually something called Altus Suite, which is the Casper exam, which we just looked at the video for, and then Snapshot and Duet. So I'll talk about Snapshot since I did it. So Kelviana, I know you said you were nervous about the whole interview feel. So that's not what like the Casper now, like that you would take would be like, that's how the Snapshot is like. So with the Snapshot, basically they describe it as a one-way interview. So you go in, okay, and then is it required? So everything that we're saying is going to be dependent on your school list and what the schools want out of you. Some schools may not require it at all. Some schools will be like, we prefer this, we recommend this. And some schools are really like, yeah, just it is what it is. So you have to pay attention to what each school you're applying to, what they are saying you need. I just did everything and I sent everything to everyone because I was like, listen, I ain't got time for all that. None of the schools that asked for Casper on my list require Snapshot, right? See, so DJ got into medical school, she didn't even have to take this stuff. But some of my schools were like, oh, we want the full Altus Suite. And that's communicated after like secondaries, but you can probably like research that beforehand as well, like Google, Reddit, etc., or the school's websites. School's websites, key. So anyway, so Snapshot, it's a one-way interview. Think of it like you're just in a Zoom by yourself, whatever, and they present you with, I think it was 3 questions, and they're interview-based questions. And you can't go back, you can't re-record, it's just raw. Like they just want to see how you answer questions. And essentially that's just supposed to be a way, if the school chooses to use it. Again, some schools will say it's required, but they probably won't even look at this video. But it's just another way for them to pull it and see how you may answer questions or something. So it'll be interview type questions. The way I prepped for it, I went on Reddit. I found a huge list of just interview questions. So it's like getting to that phase and just trying to answer stuff in different categories, personal, academics, things like that. But I really went in kind of in the dark, like, okay, I'm only going to get asked like 3 questions. I literally cannot predict what they're going to ask me. Let me just go in, like how you kind of go in with the interview. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, y'all, it was a huge blur, but I believe, so one of the questions that they did ask me, and I actually liked it, it was, what is something you are most proud of? And I really love that question because I started just saying what the heck I was proud of. And that was really it. Okay, they asked you that too. Look at that. Okay, so it'll be type of questions like that, or what's your favorite book, or, I think that's one of the practice examples they give you, but just little things like that. And again, I know it sounds super high tense, but it's literally just you talking to a screen. It gets sent off, very low pressure, like don't worry about it. And if anything, I use that as reflection for myself moving into interview season. Because at that time, I didn't get any interviews yet, but I was like, oh, I got to start doing mock interviews. Like, so it helped me reflect on how I answer questions. And that's pretty much what Snapshot is. And yeah, it's only about 10 minutes long, very short. You're literally just talking to the screen, answering questions. And yeah, Annette, would you want to speak on your experience with it?
Yeah, I admit also it's a little bit of a blur for me, but yeah, it's very similar to MMIs, to be honest, which is in the interview season. So it's nice practice in that way. But yeah, it is kind of stressful. You can't like go back and redo it. But I don't think go into it with an open mind and just you'll be fine. I honestly don't really think Snapshot was necessary in my opinion. I also think only 1 or 2 of my schools even asked for it, and I doubt they watched it. So don't stress about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then also, actually, before I move on to the Duet, does anyone have any questions right now about anything we've discussed?
Yeah, and actually, I do want to just add, don't feel pressured to do Snapshot or Duet if you're very anxious about it and it's not required. If a school says it's not required, like you really don't have to do it. Only if you're very anxious and stressed about, but there's really no reason to be stressed. Like, in my opinion, Casper is a very chill, standardized test compared to everything else we've had to do throughout the application cycle.
Awesome. Yeah, moving on to Duet, and then we'll get to the preview exam. So Duet, it was just posted in the chat, but basically it literally takes 15 minutes. This one out of all of them is like a no-brainer. It's very low stress, like we've been saying. They call it a value assessment, which basically means that it's assessing how well you align with the school's values and ultimately if you would be a good fit at the school. So basically the Altus Suite creates a compatibility score that they then send to the schools that you add. And so how this works is you choose between 2 options. So for example, you can choose between mission fit or curriculum. And actually, Amber, can I share my screen? Oh, my screen is acting up. I'm going to share my screen so y'all can see what it's going to look like. Share. There we go. Okay, so this is BMO, which I also used this article like literally the day before my Duet. And basically these are the categories like almost to the T of what you will see when you start it. So basically what happens is it'll pop up saying culture of diversity, integrity, and respect, or scientific innovation. And you will have to pick which one you value more. And that's literally it. So you compare all of these things together, and then eventually you get through all of them and you're done. So it's very like self-explanatory. For me, I didn't find any issues with it. Like it was really the most chill out of all of them. And something else I will say is that you don't see the score. So the score will be sent to the individual schools, but you will not know that score unless for some reason they want to tell you on interview day. But like Amber has already said, a lot of schools are still in this mode where they're trying to figure out how much weight they're going to add in the review process, how much weight the Snapshot and the Duet is going to add to the review process. So I don't think right now it's a big component for a lot of schools. And a lot of schools also don't require Duet as well. So again, it's just checking those schools' websites to see who requires it.
Yeah. And to go off that, so like with the Duet, that was super chill. Out of everything, that was the first thing I did. I actually didn't do anything to prep for it. I went to the frequently asked questions to see what the heck it was, but essentially just think of it like a matching game and making sure like what you value in a school is matching what a school is presenting. Which is something you should have already done when you were building out your school list. Like you're looking at the mission statement, you're seeing if they care about diversity, if they care about community, versus, oh, do they care more about research? Do they care more about academics? Do they care more, like, it's kind of just matching competencies. Yeah, real chill. So you can, if you're very anxious, like DJ said, like you can literally just fill that out first and then you be chilling and then take the Casper. And if you have to do Snapshot, do Snapshot. But yeah. And then Phaedra added the BMO Duet, which she used to help her. So does anyone have any questions? Feel free to drop in the chat or unmute, because I know we kind of said a lot before we transition to the preview exam.
So y'all probably already answered this question, but how often did they bring up your Casper results? I think I remember Amber saying it wasn't a big deal, but like,
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to know.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say I wanted to know if it also like held your application behind, kind of like the MCAT does. If you don't have an MCAT score in, they won't look at you. Is it like that too?
So the schools that I interviewed at, only one of them actually got my Casper score, and they don't even bring it up, especially because that school did MMI interview and they're more focused on, so every school is different with their interview, but they don't actually, for the most part, they're not actually going to look at any of your tests, ask you about your tests in the interview. It's more of a get to know you, and they're more focused on like the experience part of your application. Like I said, I got second quartile. It did not hold me back. I still got an interview I sent it, I think, to 3 schools. One of the schools interviewed me, the other 2 didn't. But I mean, I got accepted. So, it wasn't a big deal. I will say still do the best, but don't let the Casper be the thing that stops you from like finishing the application cycle. And like, just from what we've learned, like talking to admissions people, many schools don't even know what to do with the scores, to be honest. Like some of them will ask to use it because they're just trying to do research to figure out what should we do with this. But some of them may not actually even use it in your evaluation. Sometimes like it might boil down to if you're waitlisted or if they're deciding, should we interview person A or person B? Maybe like if y'all are like pretty closely matched up to whatever other applicant they're like considering like with you, then they might consider Casper in that moment. But you're gonna apply to like 15 or 20 schools, so like Casper isn't gonna be the thing that really stops you from getting into medicine. And I do want to just highlight, I don't think we've talked about this, there are red flags that raters can mention based on your response. But like, I mean, like you'd really have to be like, not have great social skills and really have some serious lack of empathy. Like it'd have to be a pretty extreme situation for them to red flag your application. And then remember, there's 12 people, or however, every scenario is scored by a different person. So like, unless you're getting like somehow like a red flag indicator from 12 different people, like your Casper isn't going to ruin your chance of getting into medical school. And like, all y'all are like going to do just fine. Like, I highly doubt anyone would ever get a red flag. Like they even say on the website, it would have to be a pretty extreme response to warrant like a red flag. And that would be the only situation like your Casper might result in you not getting an interview. And so I don't want you to like take that and be stressed about the Casper, but all that to say, like, it really, I don't think it's a huge factor in admissions, to be honest, like after learning everything I've gone through. And I'll stop to see if anyone wants to add anything.
Yeah, just to add on to that. So similar to what DJ said, like it's not gonna hinder you. The only way it will mess up your application is if a school that is on your list, it says it's required and you don't take it, you do not have a complete application. So they won't review your stuff. So you have to make sure that you take it by whatever deadline they have. But if you take it around like after you do your primary and then you want to do it then and then you're doing your secondaries, like that's fine. If you do it during your secondaries, that's fine because it just needs to be all processed by the time they read your file. But if you don't take the exam at all, you don't have a full application, and that's what would stop you. That's the only thing. Besides that, it's to me, it's a very subjective exam. Like, yes, it's testing competency, but like even like the way they're trying to test it is subjective. Like it's like, and like it's just another way to try to show that holistic side of you, but just know you still have interviews to shine and really show who you are. So yeah, does that answer your questions, Kaviana? Okay, perfect. Okay.
Let's get into this.
Let's do it.
Let's get into it. Okay, so I'm gonna just give a little spiel about the preview exam, formerly called the situational judgment test, and then I'm gonna ask Annette to share her experience, and then we'll all just like popcorn. So what is the preview professional readiness exam? It was called the situational judgment test during our cycle. Now called preview. It's literally the same exam. From my understanding, I looked through their website, there's no change to the format. So with this one, we've all, or Amber and I have taken it, I know for sure. And so it is a multiple choice exam. It's basically testing all of those competencies. They talk about teamwork, empathy, cultural competence, etc. And so you have 30 hypothetical scenarios that you are given, and they're testing to see how you would react or how you would act in those situations. And every scenario, you're going at it from the posture of someone who is a medical student. So all of these scenarios, you're the medical student, that's your role. Whereas in Casper, they will tell you your role at the top. You're a supervisor, you're a coworker, mother, whoever. And so with this exam, actually Amber here has the list of all of the participating schools this cycle, because there were more added than when we took it. When you take the exam, there is a live proctor watching you the entire time. And so I felt like that was a little weird because you couldn't do like certain movements or else they thought you were like cheating or something. But overall, it was a smooth experience. With this one as well, it takes you about a month to receive your score. I took mine June 16th or 17th, and then I got it back July 19th. So it's a little over a month. For this testing cycle, it's $100 flat fee to register. I know, big L, because it was free for us. So they just keep adding more money to things that you have to pay for. But $100 is for all of your schools covered. You do not have to add, there's no fee per school. It's $100 if it's one school, it's $100 if it's 10 of those schools on the list. And it's $25 to reschedule your exam, which I believe you can do like up until the day before. So it's not like the MCAT or anything like that. And Amber, I have the testing calendar up. Do you want to go to that page, or I can share my screen?
Yeah, I'll unshare my screen so you can share yours.
Okay, here's the testing calendar, y'all. So as you can see, it's already open. So that's kind of why we also wanted to have this discussion with y'all. So here, June 22nd is the first day, and then September 22nd is the last testing window. It's kind of like with the Casper we were talking about in Snapshot and Duet. Just do whatever timing feels comfortable for you. If it's right after you submit your AMCAS, do that. Or if it's after you take the MCAT or before you take the MCAT or before you start your secondaries, whatever it is for you, do it. I will say though that some schools will be waiting on this if it's required. So again, like the Casper, if you take it September 22nd, but you submit your secondary, your primary, secondary, everything else by July 25th, like they're going to be waiting for that long window to receive your SJT or sorry, preview before they can consider you for an interview. So that's just something to think about. And yeah, that's the basics of it. I'm going to share my experience after a little after, but I guess, yeah, Annette, if you want to share your experience taking the exam.
Yes. Okay. So I don't want to be negative, but honestly, I understood why they want this exam to be a thing, but I just think the way it was set up is just not realistic in any way, shape, or form as to how people think. I don't know. I just thought it was strange. And even one of the schools that required it for me, I think it was University of Minnesota, no longer requires it because I don't see them on the list. So I just think, I don't know. I think a lot of schools are using this as what's the word? A trial thing to see if it's something that's worth being relevant on their application cycle. And I personally don't think it is. But yeah, I had the experience where my proctor, there's some difficulties at first. So it took 30 minutes for my exam to even start. I think that's part of the reason I didn't really like it. But yeah, it was fine. I don't think I scored super well, to be honest, but I don't think it factors that much into your application, to be completely honest. And yeah, no, I definitely did not get that. I got much lower than that. Yeah, I think I got a 42. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else I'm trying to say. Yeah, I don't know. It's I understand what they're doing, but I just think the way it was set up was not super accommodating and accessible to most people, which was my biggest issue with it. Other people can get more into that, but yeah, it's fine. You'll be fine. Don't prepare for this. Don't stress. It's not a big deal. I think I took it in mid-June, as early as I could.
Yeah. I could go off of that as well. So context for me. So initially, y'all, I registered for the exam August 3rd, 2021, at 3 p.m. But that day, I had to help my sister. So I thought I could just change my time. But they were like, no, you gotta register for the next month. And I was like, dang, because I was ready to take it. So I had to reschedule to September 16th. So I took mine really late. And I only took it though for Morehouse and Minnesota, because those are the only two schools on my list that required it. There were some people who I met, who didn't need to take it at all. So again, very dependent on your school list, not what everyone else is doing. And for each day, they give you 3 reminders to let you know your things coming up, and then the little section to get prepared. And it's scored on a 1 to 9, and I got a 5, which is the 55th percentile. And I'm not gonna lie, y'all, I did nothing to prep for this exam because by that point I was hella burnt out. I was like, I'm not doing this no more. I barely survived secondaries. And I was like, whatever. So it's just multiple choice. I was just clicking, going through the whole time. I'm clicking the test. I'm like, when is this gonna end? That was my how I was mentally. So even when I got my score back, I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And I moved on with my life. I didn't let that try to stop me because again, those 2 schools, I didn't even end up getting an interview at. So it doesn't even matter. And I'm just like, okay, whatever. So please don't stress. Be very intentional about your school list. I would say in general, based off your school list, you'll probably have to take Casper more than this exam anyways. But still, you need to do your research on each school and what you're going to need. But yeah, I say all that to say is to just don't stress out and just take the exam, because it's just your mind and how you think in these type of scenarios and what you would do. So yeah.
Yeah, and I actually want to answer. Jamie asked a really good question, so I want to answer it for the recording purposes. But she said, I wonder how this works though. If you already have a verified app, will they screen you for those first and then view your app? So that's a very good question. So the way that it works is when you submit your primary application and then it gets verified, at the point that your app is verified is when all of the schools on your list get your primary application. That first round of screening that they do is very light. They're usually just checking if you meet their minimum MCAT score and their minimum GPA. Some schools might do a little bit more thorough of a screening, and then some schools won't even screen your app. They'll just automatically send secondaries. So they don't actually do a full application review, like a detailed application review, until you submit your secondaries, unless it's a school that specifically says that they do a thorough review before they invite you to secondaries. That is, in my opinion, few and far between. Most schools give you a chance to submit your secondaries. And that is the point after you submit your secondaries. That is when you want to have everything done. You want to have your Casper done, all of these extra pieces so that your application is fully considered complete. And you really technically have until the deadline, but when your secondaries are submitted, then you move to a pile to get reviewed, and you might delay yourself if you still have other pieces. So I would say have the Casper done by the time, like, try to plan it so that you have your score coming in by the time you're submitting your secondaries or sooner. You don't need it for the primaries.
So this is the page actually that I referenced when I took it. So I got the 98th percentile, which is an 8. And basically, I don't know how that happened, but 2 weeks before my test, and like, y'all don't have to do this, I was super extra, but 2 weeks before, I was like, oh, I should probably look at this practice exam booklet, which is on the screen, and probably do some practice questions. So I did like a couple that week, and then the week of the exam, I was like, okay, let me go through this practice booklet. So there's 30, it's a full length practice exam. A lot of the scenarios on the test day are actually similar to that. So that's why I went through all of them. Basically, I did all of those right before the test. And I think the best advice I can give is to do the practice questions. Really, a lot of those are similar to what it is on test day, but also the way it works is you have the scenario. Actually, Amber, can you click the exam booklet and then go to the first one? It's like page it's like page 6 or something, 7. Okay, yeah, so we're looking at number 1, right? So this is how it looks on the day. You're just going through multiple scenarios. So with this one, basically you have to decide if each of these actions 1 through 5, are very ineffective, ineffective, effective, or very effective. And how you determine that is the page before page 4 actually explains what each of these mean. So like you can see here, they have definitions. Basically, very ineffective is like, it's going to cause a lot of problems. Ineffective is it may cause a problem. It's certainly not really going to help. And then effective is, oh, it could help. And very effective is this would definitely help. So if you go back to number 5, Amber, basically, when you're looking at all these number 1 through 5, you have to think about the immediate next step. That's what the AAMC says to do anyway. And I feel like that really helped me. So I know also I don't want to keep y'all too long. Would it be helpful if I just went through this one really quickly? Like we just did it together?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, great. How about I'll just give y'all a few seconds to read the scenario so I don't have to, you don't have to listen to my voice reading it out loud, and then give me a thumbs up when you're done. Okay, great. So we're just gonna run through this. So the main things that I like to do is just to think about what exactly stood out to me. So with this one, it was volunteer opportunity, and then also required lab, and you can't make up the lab, and then also participation in the lab will count toward your grade. So those are the kind of main things to think about. You have volunteer opportunity, which is voluntary, and then not required, and then you have a required lab. So that's kind of just like really quick, like when you read it, just think about those things. So number one, it says skip your lab for 2 weeks to attend the volunteer opportunity. So basically you read the scenario and then it's like, what would you do? I'm gonna skip the lab for 2 weeks to attend the volunteer opportunity. Does that sound like a great idea? Probably not. And so by skipping the lab, you're actually not fulfilling your obligation to go to a required class. And again, we have to think about this as a medical student. All these scenarios, you're a medical student. So if you're a medical student skipping lab that's required, it's not good. It's not the best. And so for me, the way I think about this is I will tell myself, does this help? Or does this not help at all? So if it doesn't help at all, I lean towards the ineffective, very ineffective, and I don't even think about effective, very, very effective. So right now we're in between ineffective and very ineffective. And this one is going to cause a lot more problems. So if it's going to cause additional problems, for example, you skip the lab, you can't make up the grade, you can't make up the lab, so your grade could plummet. You could also have a poor relationship with your professor who thinks that you're prioritizing volunteering over required class, things like that. It's very ineffective. So that's what you would select for this. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. And then for the second one, what would you do? Should you ask your lab instructor to identify a solution that will allow you to attend both? So with this one, you're trying to take the initiative to figure out how to attend both. That part is great, but where you went wrong is you're asking your lab instructor to identify a solution and you're putting all the responsibility on, okay, bye, thank you for being here. You're putting all the responsibility on the instructor instead of figuring it out for yourself, right? And so that's where it may cause a problem with the relationship with your professor. And so that's why it would be ineffective, because it's not causing a significant amount of problems if your instructor identifies a solution. So it's just not effective because you're essentially putting the responsibility on your instructor when really you could figure out how to attend both. So that's why it's just ineffective, and it's not very ineffective. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm glad you explained, because I'm stuck in the whole Walmart cashier assessment where they ask you similar things and they're like, is this a or very unsatisfying? And you go with the extremes all the time. So thanks for explaining that.
Yes, yeah. If there's some effort to get closer to what we want, which we'll see, number 5 is the very effective option, then it's not that extreme. So plus I think since these are back to back, you can clearly see that 1 is way more extreme than number 2. And then for number 3, what would you do? You'd stop pursuing the volunteer opportunity. Stop pursuing the volunteer opportunity so that you can attend the required lab. So with this one, you're actually basically saying, okay, I'll attend the required lab, which I'm responsible, that is an obligation, and I'll stop pursuing the volunteer opportunity, like that's fine. And this one is actually effective because you are recognizing that you have a duty to attend the lab and like participate, but it's not very effective because we want to figure out a way that you can still volunteer, right? At the same time as attending your lab. That's really the goal here. But it doesn't affect your grade, obviously, if you stop volunteering for now. So that's why that one is effective and not very effective, because we really want to find the best of both worlds. So basically with that one too, like if you ever get stumped, again, I just think about, will this help or will this not help? So with that one, it will help because you're saying, okay, well, I'll still go to the lab, like my grade's not in jeopardy. My relationship with my instructor's not in jeopardy. My grade's gonna be fine. For 4, if you tell your lab instructor in advance that you will miss 2 of your lab sessions, now we're going back where we are missing a required class. So what do you all think this one is?
Very ineffective.
Yes, there we go. It is very ineffective because although you're trying to tell your lab instructor in advance, like that's where it can throw you off where you're like, oh, they tried. But no, you're not supposed to miss your class again, because in medical school, like they want us to attend our required classes, and then all of the volunteer stuff is not as high of a priority. And so lastly, attend the lab and investigate if similar volunteer opportunities are available at another time. Bingo, that one's very effective. And I will say to you that sometimes the very effective one is going to be the first one. It's going to be the third one. It's all, yay, I'm glad. It's all in a different order. So for me, I think what helps too is when you're taking the exam, just think about the best case scenario, which in this one, you want to volunteer, but you also want to attend lab. Just think about that. And then if you just skim it and see 5 bet very effective and click that, then you can go through all the other ones because you know it's not going to be as good as that option. However, some of these are going to repeat. So like we had 2 very ineffectives. Some of the scenarios could literally be 3 effectives, 1 ineffective, and that's it. You don't use very effective, you don't use the other one. And so don't be thrown off by like, oh, I repeated so many of these. That can happen. And these are not like contingent upon another. These are all like their own question in and of itself. So after I do 1, I'm like, scratch that. What would I do? Do number 2, scratch that. What would I do right after number 3, and so on. And so, yay, I'm glad that was helpful though. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Nope.
Great. Yeah, basically just do that practice test and like you will be fine. I ended up doing well in the end, but I was getting everything wrong when I started that practice test. And then you will see through the score key rationale, which is literally at the end of that document, you will see that the way that the explanation is written out, it will be very similar for different situations. So if y'all ever get stuck on any of those practice questions too, and like the rationale doesn't make sense, feel free to message me as well, because I've already seen all of them. It's the same test booklet and I can walk you through it. But yeah, DJ, Amber, do you have anything else to add for that?
I didn't take preview, but just generally speaking, once you finish your test and submit your response, just move on with your life. Like, if you want to check your score, but don't sweat. Like, no matter how it turns out for you, you have so much more in the application cycle to deal with that, like, don't dwell on it. Don't think, maybe I should have answered this scenario different. Don't repeat the questions in your head and go through it over and over. Just move on with your life. Like, you did it, and wait for when you're going to get your interview invitations or secondaries, and just focus on the next stage, because your secondaries and your interviews are going to speak a lot more about you, more than these tests. Like, numbers don't define you. And with the Casper, like, you only see your percentile rank, but the medical school is actually getting a more detailed assessment of like the qualities that the raters see in your response. So like, no matter where you fall on your score, you know, they're going to have some things to say about, good things to say about you, no matter how you rank.
And also it is, at the end of the day, like still in quote unquote beta testing, like for a lot of schools. So we really don't know at this point how much it factors into the decision. But on the AAMC website, the link that Amber showed with the schools, some of them will even say research only, which literally means it's not counting towards evaluating you as an applicant or not. But I'll let Amber talk to us about what's on the screen.
Yes, awesome. So before we go into questions that are submitted, like for people who couldn't make it or had to leave early, are there any other questions for people here right now that you needed to get off your chest that you feel like wasn't answered or anything? We just wanted to make space for you first.
Thank you for having this, because I vaguely heard about the Casper exam by one friend, but I never heard of the other two exams. But the Casper exam does remind me of those tests that you have to take when you're filling out employment questions. And when I had to take those, guess what? When I saw those, guess what? I closed out the application. Goodbye.
I feel that. It's like extra work. Yeah. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing. We're happy that it's very helpful for you. Again, like, build out your school list first, and then you'll be able to see exactly which ones you're required to take. Some schools will say recommended, and we strongly advise, if it says recommended, do it, because that's just another opportunity for you to show yourself holistically as an applicant. And it's just another way to kind of say required, I think. But yeah, build out your school list, and then you'll know for a fact which tests you have to take. You may leave this, and after you make your school list, you probably won't even have to take the SJT. You never know. So just like, make sure you'll do the research on your own. Any other questions or comments or concerns?
Yeah, and even if, I know we're saying if it does say recommended, you know, consider still doing it. But at the same time, like, your application will still get considered if you decide not to do it at a recommended school. When they say recommended, they truly do mean that. Like, it really is not required. We're just saying it's just another opportunity to showcase your skills and who you are.
Yep. All right. So now we have questions submitted for people who couldn't come or left early. So when is the last day to take the exam? So I know Jamie had added.
So you'll have to look at your school list, because it's going to vary. Like, I believe Morehouse was the only school that required preview for me, and their cutoff was like early October, but there were test dates available through December, but none of those later test dates counted for Morehouse. And with Casper, again, you'll want to look at the school list, but I think they have exams all the way through the end of October, early November. And most schools have their secondary primary and secondary applications are due. Like, it depends on the school, but it could be anywhere from middle of October to middle of November to late December. So again, like, you'll have to check your school list, and then if I don't know when the last available date that is there, but that's just, it will depend on the schools you're applying to.
Yeah, and we advise you, like, yes, like, don't worry about it where like you feel like you need to rush to get in early, but also don't take the very last test date. I think a good time to take it is, if you're in this mode where you're like right now you're studying for your MCAT and then you're applying, like don't give so much pressure on yourself to also do it during that time. When you submit your AMCAS, like look at some dates that are after that, so that could be like your waiting period in between AMCAS and then submitting your secondary. So you don't want to do it within that time, because then like you'll be writing fatigue and all of that, but your schedule best, and like just go on each respective site, reference it to your school list, and make sure you know your deadlines. But if you're in the middle or early, that's good. So like you're not burnt out like how I was during my SJT exam, because I was just done. So yeah, find a good happy medium for you, but it's also pretty chill.
Yeah, I think every school is going to accept every preview exam, because I know our cycle, there were some in October that weren't accepted by some of those schools, but since the last date is September 22nd and 3rd to take the preview exam, you don't have to worry about a school not accepting it, because everything from June to September they'll accept. So it's really making sure the Casper, you don't take it in January of 2023 when it's actually due in November of this year. So
Exactly. And for people,
should you take the exam even if none of the schools you're applying to require it? Okay, so DJ talked about this already. You don't have to take the Duet, the Snapshot, the Casper, or the Preview just for fun. Another thing too is if you take the Preview, I think your score report shows up on your AMCAS. I think they're trying to do that this cycle. So I wouldn't definitely not do that if you're not actually going to apply to any of those schools. But I'll see if that changes, because I'm not sure exactly. But yeah, if you don't have to take it, don't take it. I do think most people have to take Casper though. Like there has to be at least one school that requires it that you're applying to, probably, but it depends on the school list again. And then
Yeah.
Yeah.
And information or requirements can evolve over time, because more and more, Casper was just a new thing in 2015-ish when I was graduating. More and more schools are asking for Casper or Preview. So, there could be a point where it's really hard to avoid taking it. So but with Casper, you could potentially take it and wait until after you get your score to decide if you want to send it to your schools, if it's optional, but you won't be able to for AAMC.
Yeah. And just for people who can't see the chat, DJ had put in again, like after you submit your primary app, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks for that to get verified for you to get your secondaries. Take your competency-based exams during that time. That's a good time. You literally have like a month to chill and just do that. And then secondaries come, kill out secondaries, and you're good. For the sake of time, we're just gonna go really quick. Can FAB recipients get vouchers for the cost? Yes. So go to the AAMC website to get all of that details, but it would be waived. Is this in person or online? It's online.
Both of them.
Both of them. How much time should go in preparing for this? You know yourself best, like if you feel like you need to do more, do that. But overall, this is a very chill exam compared to the MCAT. Do not kill yourself over it. We recommend going to the respective sites, understanding the format of the exam, doing some practice exams that site gives you, and then chill out. Don't feel like you got to do millions of practice tests. And then,
I think the best thing you can do too is actually prepare like for the day itself, because the ProctorU extension, like I looked at that stuff, like glanced at it the day before, and I was like very confused on the extensions I needed to download, how the proctor would view me during my test, like what I needed to do. All that stuff was a little confusing. So if you just familiarize yourself with like actual test day, then you'll be more like calm, cool, and collected when you actually take the exam.
Right. And then last question, what are your favorite resources for studying? So me personally, I just used what each site gave to do it because I was just kind of like, I just didn't understand the format. But I know Phaedra and DJ could probably speak on the resources that they use.
Yeah, just use, I personally used yes, like the AAMC practice booklet and guide for preview. And then for Casper Snapshot, or I didn't take Snapshot, but for Casper and Duet, I know BMO also has articles on Snapshot and videos. That was super helpful. So I just used all their resources for free, the free resources.
Yeah, I agree with BMO, and then just the plenty of resources that are available with Casper Altus Suite website.
Yep.
Yeah, and the Casper practice exam, of course, too.
Right. And then DJ said test all the technical stuff early. So obviously do a mini run through with yourself before like you sit down so that you just feel good. I know for me, because I did do the snapshot, I practiced a lot for that because I was just like, oh my gosh, like making sure I understood the timing and like how to click and all of that stuff. But I just had to be at ease with that within myself when I know there's probably someone else who just went through it. So again, you know yourself best, you know, familiarize yourself with the test and you will do perfectly fine. Yeah, and that's
Yay. Thank you so much for staying till the end.
Do you have any burning ending questions?
Not about this. I just have to do more research on it. I haven't made my school list yet, so I don't know which ones are looking for what. Yeah. But it was super helpful to know about it.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thank you for coming. DJ, if you want to plug the pre-med consultation, you can plug that.
Oh, I'm on mute. Yeah, so we are launching like a pre-health consulting initiative for underrepresented med students. So we'll drop our email. We don't have a website quite yet, but it's docswithadream@gmail.com, and I'll put that in the chat. It's a period between each word.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you want to meet or like schedule an hour, 30-minute meeting with us to go over whatever journey you are at as a pre-med, we're here.
I mean, I actually have a meeting with you guys. Well,
period.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, that's the one on tomorrow. Yeah.
Tomorrow. Perfect. Okay, well, we'll see you there. And again,